name is Amanda Preston, second grade. I decided to create a project that I could use to explain critical thinking skills to my second graders. The presentation is set to appeal to and engage second grade students. The purpose of this lesson is for students to be introduced to what critical thinking is, to see how real-life kids use it, and then to learn the 4 steps that are necessary to actually do critical thinking. Throughout the lesson, students will be practicing these skills in order to make good decisions. For the Kansas State Standard, I used a Common Core writing standard for this lesson that has the students writing their opinions and their readings. For the NETS standards, for this particular lesson, students will not be using technology to aid in their critical thinking skills. However, in the future, we will introduce them to finding and using resources online to help with their decision making. For this lesson, they will view some YouTube movies and use critical thinking to respond to them. For myself, I will be showing an understanding of how to use Google Docs and YouTube. The objective for this lesson is the second grade student will be able to apply critical thinking skills to make a choice about a specific scenario. Students will use discussion with their peers and the 4 critical thinking steps to make a decision. They will be able to explain in writing why this decision was the best choice in their opinion. It should be noted that this is a very basic lesson. The goal is just to practice making a choice and giving a reason, and let this guide us for future critical thinking lessons. To prepare for this lesson, I will need to create this presentation that you are currently viewing, and I will also need to locate 2 YouTube videos that clearly show elementary students using critical thinking skills to make decisions and solve problems. Students will need to have their journals and pencils, and I will need markers for the whiteboard. Also copy slides 19 and 20 of this presentation to make an external document. Students will be actively involved throughout this lesson. They will be doing a great deal of sharing and discussing. They will be viewing and responding to critical thinking videos, and they will be writing their opinions and reasonings for different choices. There are several adaptations for different learners for this lesson. Students who struggle with learning could be paired with a higher level student for the sharing and discussion times. Students with visual or attention difficulty will need to be seated with a clear view of the presentation screen and the videos. Students who struggle with writing could give responses or have their thoughts scribed. Higher level learners could create scenarios and challenge each other to defend their cases. For the assessment, students will use the 4 critical steps to make a decision. They will write their choice and their reasonings in a short opinion piece. This will be evaluated simply by completion. Right now, we just want students to practice the steps, make a choice, and tell why. I will be providing feedback on each student's paper. Our critical thinking steps taught in this lesson can be adapted for any content area or age group. An example of a content would be to have the child tell whether a character made a good or poor choice and what choice they could have made differently. To simplify it for a first grade lesson, we would just simplify the language and the writing component. This is the point where I would actually start my lesson. So I will start the lesson having students do a think, pair, share activity where they discuss with a partner all of the things that a teacher can make them do. When they are through discussing, I will share some of my ideas, seen here, and then record more of their ideas over here on the right. At this point, I will explain that we are going to learn to do something new. I will explain that this new thing will require them to really use their brains and think hard. I will have students make predictions about what they think critical thinking is. I will define critical thinking as being able to make good decisions and tell why you make those decisions. Students and I will spend time brainstorming different critical thinking situations. At this point of the lesson, I feel like it would be very valuable for students to see examples of critical thinking. Students will watch these 2 YouTube videos and respond in their journals, telling what decisions had to be made and what things need to be considered for each decision. The first video is about a school that's planting a garden. Students would have to consider what plants would be beneficial for the habitat they were preparing for. The second follows a PE class as they undertake an impossible mission to get their teammates across the gym without their feet on the gym floor. Due to time purposes, I'm not going to go ahead and click on these videos. After responding to these videos, we would share together as a class. Next, I would guide students through the 4 critical thinking steps. First, they need to be able to identify the problem. Our class is going to use this scenario, is homework good for 2nd graders to do, model these steps. We will work together to create a web about our thoughts and feelings on homework. Students would help me fill out the web about homework. I would ask guiding questions to help students think all sides and feelings with this issue. We would then use our web to sort our ideas into categories. For this particular scenario, we're sorting into good and bad categories. Hopefully, students will begin to organize their thoughts and weed out any unnecessary items. At this point, students will need to discuss each item on the chart. They will also need to consider if any additional information is needed in order to make a decision. They might need to talk to someone else, or they might need to just research. Now we have a choice to make. We will vote to make our decision, and so will write the reason why they think this was a good or maybe bad choice in their journals. Next, students will get a chance to practice these skills in a small group setting. I will read the following scenario. 2 students accidentally knocked over Mrs. Preston's frog picture frame and it broke. No happened. Use your critical thinking skills to decide what the students should do. Students will use the steps on this slide and the next to make their decision. These slides could be made into an external document to guide students through the critical thinking process. First, they'll consider what question they're trying to answer. They will create a web of all of their different ideas and feelings. Then they'll make a chart and start sorting their different ideas. Next, they're going to consider all sides. There might be someone else they need to talk to or some additional research they need to do. Finally, they will make their choice, and they will say, the choice I made was blank, and I think this was a good choice because. After making their choice, student groups will share with the class. This could lead to some really interesting discussions. In conclusion, students will have a better understanding of critical thinking after participating in this presentation. Students will be able to use the 4 steps learned in this presentation to make critical decisions and explain why they made that particular decision. This will be a guide for future lessons that focus on critical thinking skills. Here you will see my resources listed, including the 2 YouTube videos and our textbook for this class. I hope this wasn't too elementary, but I hope you learned what critical thinking might look like through the eyes of a 2nd grader. Thank you.